Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his praise and best wishes for our armed forces and our emergency services? And can I join others in wishing you happy Christmas, Mr. Speaker, and all the staff of the Commons, and indeed everyone across this House. I'm coming to sing in a minute. Mr. Speaker, I've had the great joy of spending time recently with some amazing young people from the Bath Philharmonia Young Carers Choir. They're a brilliant example of the power of music to make a difference in young people's lives. One member of the choir, Caitlin, has even developed a special new project to spread the joy of music to young people in our schools and communities. So will the Prime Minister meet Caitlin to hear more about her exciting project and work with us and others to support music in our schools and communities?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I welcome his comments, and as you will know, today we're introducing the landmark Children's Wellbeing Bill to enable all children to succeed, including young carers. That increased the pupil funding premium to over £2.9 billion, which can be used to support pupils with identified needs, and that, of course, includes carers. And now young carers are on the school census, as he knows, that's since 2023. They have greater visibility and schools will be better able to identify and support them. Mr. Speaker, he talks of singing. There was carols outside our front door on Monday, and my family was surprised to see the Honourable Gentleman, Right Honourable Gentleman, shamelessly plugging his song. We have strict rules about antisocial behaviour, but in the spirit of the season, I simply say Happy Christmas.
Sir Red David. Well, Happy Christmas, Prime Minister. Can I thank him for allowing the Young Carers Choir to sing outside number 10? I hope he and the staff enjoyed it. Our song is called Love Is Enough, but the hard truth is, for many young carers and young adult carers, actually love is not enough. These amazing young people need real action to help them with the challenges they face. So in addition to the measures that the Prime Minister just talked about, will he support the Carers Trust's Young Carers Covenant to make sure across government, across local authorities, we are supporting these young people with all the support they deserve?
We should support these young people, and we continue to work across the sector to ensure all schools identify, support and record data on young carers. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we boosted the carers allowance in the budget, but I agree with him in relation to these young carers.
Dave Dougan.
Mr. Speaker, before the election, this Prime Minister said he would lower energy bills by £300. Since he took office, they've gone up by £149. He said he would protect the winter fuel payment, but now he's in power, he stripped it off our pensioners. And he said he lined up for many photos with waspy women, saying he'd have their backs, and he's just betrayed them in the most scandalous way possible. This is now the defining characteristic of this one-trick phony Prime Minister who says one thing and does another. In Scotland, the SNP are 16 points ahead in the polls. Does he understand? Does he understand why the people of these islands, especially those of us in Scotland, treat him with such contempt?
They used to ask those questions. They used to ask those questions from this sort of area with very many MPs not so long ago. That all changed in July, and he's now carping from right up there. We can hardly hear him.
In 2022, the Prime Minister supported calls for fair and fast compensation for 1950s women impacted by the changes to the state pension. And yet, just yesterday, his government rejected those same calls out of hand. Mr. Speaker, is this what the Prime Minister meant when he promised to lead a government of change?
Mr. Speaker, this is a serious issue. Between 2005 and 2007, there were, I think, a 28-month delay in letters to women born in the 1950s about changes to pension age. That was unacceptable, and it was right that the government apologised for that. In 2011, the former Chancellor, George Osborne, then accelerated those changes with very little notice. That equally was unacceptable, and Labour opposed it at the time. It is a serious issue. It's a complex issue. The research, as he knows, shows that 90% of those impacted knew about the changes that were taking place. And I'm afraid to say the taxpayer simply can't afford the tens of billions of pounds in compensation when the evidence does show that 90% of those impacted did know about it. That's because of the state of our economy.
Ian Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Parliamentary Ombudsman concluded that an injustice was done to 1950s born women. It ruled that they are owed compensation and asked Parliament intervened to deliver justice. In my constituency of Liverpool, West Derby, I have more than 5,000 women affected. And alongside a great many members in this House, I believe these women are owed compensation for the injustice done to them at the hands of the state. So will the Prime Minister give members the opportunity to vote on whether they believe WASPI women are owed compensation?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've just set out the factual background and the percentage that knew about the change. And the simple fact of the matter is, in the current economic circumstances, the taxpayer can't bear the burden of tens of billions of pounds in compensation. Well, they're chuntering away. In 14 years, they accelerated the changes and not once spoke about compensation.
The WASPI women fought one of the most sustained and passionate campaigns for justice that I can remember, year in, year out. We did promise them that we would give them justice. I understand the issue about the cost, but does the Prime Minister really understand how let down WASPI women feel today?
I do understand the concern, of course I do. I set out the history, Mr. Speaker, but the research is clear that 90% of those impacted did know about the change. And in those circumstances, the taxpayer simply can't afford the burden of tens of billions of pounds of compensation. But I do understand the concerns.